So, as far as I can tell, there are three reasons to tell your story in your marketing. The first one is to entertain, the second one is to educate, and the third reason is to enlighten. And those are in order because you can't educate until you've got someone's attention. So you kind of have to entertain them somehow first, and you can't enlighten them until you've educated them. And enlightenment is all to do with upgrading someone's level of thinking about you and your topic. But ultimately, we're not trying to do this to be altruistic. We're trying to move people towards the point where they're ready to raise their hand and say, yes, I'm interested in working with you, in hiring you for the big high value project or service or whatever it is. And I have to say that when it gets to that point, that's kind of not my wheelhouse in terms of how best to present that offer, how best to structure that offer. So I'm really happy today to have Angela Tsai. Have I said your surname
Perfect,
correctly? Angela
actually.
Tsai. Yeah.
Perfect. Well done.
It just occurred to me now. I've never actually said your surname before. So I've got Angela on the call. So I've known Angela for a while through the Six-Star Business community.
Yes.
And actually, before we get into the topic, I wanted to say, so we've been connected on LinkedIn for a while, and I'd say that you're probably one of the more active people that I follow on LinkedIn, and you're very prolific in terms of putting stories on LinkedIn, sharing personal stories, which immediately catapults you into the realm of de facto being a story copywriter. But I wondered how that, have you always been doing that on LinkedIn? And what has the outcome been is probably the first question.
Wow. I love that question, and especially that you, who is someone who that I very much admire in the storytelling space, actually would categorize me as someone in the storyteller copywriting space. So thank you for that, first of all.
We're all storytellers. It's just a lot of us haven't realized it yet.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So to answer that question, no, I haven't always been like that. For the first 2 years of running my business, to be honest, I didn't post almost a single thing on LinkedIn because I was absolutely terrified of what people from my past career were going to think of me.
Mm.
I just, I had this idea that, LinkedIn was a certain space. There was a certain image that I
It is
hadn't,
for
I guess, at that
business.
point. Yeah, I hadn't at that point, really shared. So first, I think starting to post things onto LinkedIn, it was definitely a journey in the beginning. And if someone, scrolls like far back enough, I don't even know if you can scroll that far back, if LinkedIn keeps all of these things, but you'll see that a lot of my posts, at that time, like if I read back, I feel like it feels very rigid. It feels that when I did start posting, I felt like I needed to have something that I had to say, something worthy to say. And, this pressure that you put on that, it almost comes through, and the storytelling, it isn't something that really flows in.
It's a bit
in
contrived to force fit it to the message.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's definitely been a journey, but yeah, no, I'm really super chuffed that the storytelling is coming through, and yeah, that that you recognize that. It's awesome.
What kind of engagement? I mean, obviously, I only see what I see, but what kind of engagement do you get from other people from it?
Quite good, actually. I actually spoke with an ex-mentor of mine, and this is a funny thing that I know we're jumping straight into the meat of it. A lot of people, when they go into business and they've had like a corporate career, they experience a similar sort of fears. They don't want to put themselves out there on LinkedIn because they're worried about what people think. Really super common. What they don't realize is that a lot of people are watching, a lot of people are lurking. So just because you're not getting engagement doesn't mean that things aren't resonating. And I actually spoke with a couple of people that I really looked up to, I respected back in my corporate days. They were my mentors. There were people I worked with, people that I was basically worried about, what they would think of me when I post on LinkedIn. And they were the ones that actually approached me and say, hey, really like what you're doing. And this was privately. So they never engaged on LinkedIn at all. So I literally didn't even realize that they had seen my posts or anything like that. But one of the mentors that I worked with for quite a long time, he was quite a significant individual during my career building. He said to me that he noticed a distinct shift in my content, compared to a couple of years ago. He said, I felt like at that time you sort of really, it felt like you really needed to have something to say, but now you're just saying, you're just in it, you're just in the middle. Like there's no trying to
There's
like
no
do
filter.
anything. Yeah, and funny enough, that's the kind of content that's being the most engaging. I find that sometimes when I call it sort of like a stream of consciousness. So a little while ago, when my mind was quite cluttered, I was trying to like get clarity. I started doing this exercise, which you're probably aware of because you're a writer. It's similar to morning pages, where you just sort of like dump a lot of your thoughts, like a stream of consciousness. Some of my best performing content has actually been just literally snippets that are being lifted out of that stream of consciousness that has been a little bit more tidied up, to make sure it actually has
you can never predict which ones are going to get the most engagement.
Absolutely.
And it's always the ones you almost didn't post that
that's
actually
right.
generate the most conversations.
That's right. Because if you think about like even just if you look at movie trailers don't take you from beginning to end. They don't say, okay, this movie is going to be about this. And then after that, we're going to take you through the structure of XYZ. And at the end, you're going to get a big surprise or whatever. They throw you right in the middle of the action. And that's the kind of content that resonates with people.
I think there's often themes of like universal struggle in terms of, I obviously really engage with your posts about, when, is it Aria, your daughter's name?
Yes.
Yeah, when she's been sick and she's been sent home from nursery and it's completely derailed your work day. You had all of these big goals and aspirations, and it's like, yes, that obviously resonates with me because I also have small children who, to some degree, are ruining my life. Well, that's why I like to tell people.
Kicking you in the head at 3 a.m.
They've stolen my mornings, and I resent it. So that resonates. But it's like, even if you didn't have kids, I think that would still resonate because it's a human story about struggle. And
that's right.
But I think what you're then doing is you're then tying it to your message in a sort of sensible way, rather than kind of, it doesn't feel like it's force fitted, if that makes sense. And there's a degree of art to that, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a degree of art, but it's also a degree of just letting go of that forced expectation on yourself. I think once you get to that level of clarity around what you do, it's amazing. Like, I'm walking my daughter to childcare in the morning, and the dots are just connecting. It's like, oh, this thing connects to that, this thing connects to that, this thing connects to that. And you start to see how there's relevance in the everyday. But when you don't have that clarity, there's just too much. Like there's too much to sift through. And that's when you feel like you have to sit down and force yourself to structurally try to find the connecting points in different sort of stories and situations. And that comes across in your content. And maybe that's something that is a part of the process, is just simply a part of it, that, it takes a while to get to that clarity. Then everything starts to, link into the central point. But yeah,
I think that's a really profound point. Like if you're scrabbling to get to the heart of your core message, I think then finding examples and anecdotes that are going to illustrate that message is going to be difficult, because you're still trying to grasp at the heart of what you're trying to say. Correct. So you came from corporate life. What did you do in your corporate life, and how has that transitioned into what you do today?
So back in my corporate life, I mean, it's like, how do you articulate what you did in your corporate life? I didn't have one of these roles where I could say that, this is what I did. I sort of did a lot of everything. And that was, I think, a part of what made it so difficult when I jumped into business, because I had done so many things and I had built experience over so many different areas. Like there was strategy.
I'm going to raise my hand for that observation as well. I think we need to create like a support group for like recovering like recovering generalists.
Yes, recovering generalists. And then suddenly you're thrust into this world where you can't be a generalist, because a generalist doesn't stand out. You need to find your specialization, but then that requires choice. And back in the corporate days, being a generalist was a strength, because people are like, oh, wow, we can put you in so many places, Angela or Rob, you're super adaptable. We can put you here, we can put you here, we can put you here. And obviously you're trying a lot of things, you're navigating through your career. So I was definitely in one of these buckets. My last role that I left was a sort of a cross between product offerings and strategy, business development and marketing. So it was like sort of everything together. So at that point, my role was to take So I worked for one of the largest consultancies in the world, Accenture, and my role was to take the marketing skill sets and the marketing capabilities across the entire organization, which was at that point about 10,000 people that were doing marketing campaigns and all kinds of like different data analytics, all types of different marketing work, and sort of amalgamate all that and bring it together into packaged and specific offerings that were going to be well positioned in the market. And I love that. I think that was definitely a place that I first started to get a sense of what offering was. I think when people asked me what I did at that time, I basically said I'm in product, because that's what I see offering to be. And, still very much related to marketing. But yeah, when I left that world, so my background is in marketing. I studied marketing. I've dabbled in parts of marketing throughout my corporate career, but never really as a practitioner. I was always more on the strategy side of things and the management side of things. And when I jumped into business, firstly, it was really fun because I actually got to do hands-on a lot of the stuff that, I kind of knew about. I kind of knew how things worked at a high level strategy level, but never actually got into myself. And that was a really sort of fun exploration, just rolling up my sleeves and doing things until it got to the point where I realized I actually need to make money from this.
Yeah, you can be the starving artist. And
yeah, that's right. That's right. So that was what I did back in the corporate days. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. And like it feels like there was germ that it feels like there was the beginnings of what you're doing today in those corporate days of like, yes, because you're a journalist, they could throw you into any swimming pool and you would swim. But it feels like there was some work in there that must have been like, when you do the work that you really feel like you're supposed to be doing, and it's like but sometimes in a corporate role it's kind of fleeting because you're doing so many different things. And then what happened for me was a sort of similar-ish journey, but then you kind of set out by yourself and you realize that there's an awful lot that you don't know, and that it takes time to kind of find your path into what you really should be doing that leans into your kind of genius zone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a journey of discovery for sure. I mean, I think about those early days when I first left business and first left corporate and jumped into business. I mean, I had no clue what I was doing. I mean, I could jump into a lot of things. I jumped into immediately some freelance consulting, and I had people in my network that were like, oh yeah, you can come and do some work for us and all of that stuff. I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm in business and I'm doing stuff for myself. Like, yeah, this is easy. This is working. And it got to a certain point where I just realized that, you know what, I'm pretty much burning out because I had no plan. I was just like trying to do things. And the only thing that was basically connecting me to the fact that I was a business owner and no longer an employee was that I had a registered business. That was essentially it. But for the rest, I was still in that place where I felt burnt out. I wasn't living the lifestyle I wanted. I was working all these crazy hours. I was at that point doing a consulting project for a board of a life science company. And, I was working weekends. I was pulling together board presentations. I was, talking with the CEO, and my dad was visiting at the time from Australia. Like he hadn't come to see me in Europe for pretty much years. This was the first time. And I didn't have any time to spend with him because I was just stressed. I was stressed about the work. I was stressed about delivery. I was delivering. I was, doing all the business development. I was having to think about, okay, what next? Managing the business side of things. And it just, I think I got to that point where I was like, you know what? This wasn't what I got into business to do. This wasn't why I left my previous life behind. So yeah, that was I guess a next point in trying to figure out, what this business looks like. And it sounds like
I think we all go through that phase, like surely we all get into business and then it's not what you expected, or you end up tired, burnt out, doing so many things.
That's it.
Trying to run the business, even though you've got no real experience in doing that. I think we all just have to go through that phase. And I think unless you go through that phase, it's very difficult to kind of progress. I'm sometimes reminded of the Airbnb founders who commented that they actually launched 6 times. It's just that nobody noticed the first 5.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that. I'll have to look into that story.
Yeah, I'll have to find the quote. So then your business today, can we explore that in terms of what does your day look like now? So compared to that phase, how does your work day look now?
So Workday at the moment looks really, really good. I have a business partner, as you know,
Mm,
and for those of you that are listening, my business partner is Christina. She is my best friend. We've known each other for literally about, we say 25 years, but to be honest, we stopped counting. So I don't actually know exactly how many years it's
mm,
been. We've known each other for a very, very long time. But last year, when I had my baby, I don't know, there was so many things that shifted. So I'm someone that has always been this typical sort of A-type, ambitious, driven personality. It was what carried me through my corporate days. It was what carried
mm,
me through the first couple of years of business where I was like, yeah, go, 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 go.
mm,
I could work all the hours, and for some reason, I just wouldn't get tired because I was so passionate and driven and loved basically working, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah.
I just loved it. And we sat down because everything literally just turned upside down when I had my baby. And, obviously just before this, we were talking about our kids, and you've been through a very similar journey with, the
Two
whole
premature
the
babies.
premature
Yeah.
babies. And, my baby came 2 months early,
Mm,
and that was a massive shock because mentally, emotionally, nothing was ready for the
mm,
baby, but she arrived. And I think in that shock moment to my system, everything just changed. Like, priorities started to shift.
mm,
It took me out of that, I guess, that flow that I had been so used to. And we sat down, me and Christina, to have a 5-year planning session, just looking forward in terms of, okay, how do we see our business in the next 5 years? What do we want?
mm,
And both of us, we come from consulting backgrounds. And I think, naturally, at that time, she was just about to jump into the business as well. Well, no, actually, at that point, she had already fully come into the business. And, for her, she was like, yeah, we can do consulting, we can do this, we can do that, we can go for the big corporates, all of that stuff. And I said to her, I only want to work 15 or 16 hours a week, 15 to 16 hours a week.
mm,
And this is coming from someone who, in my entire career, and especially in my last role, I worked in management consulting environment, which is super hectic. 80 to 90-hour weeks were not unusual.
mm,
And for me, I was more than happy to pour a similar amount of effort into my business, just because now I was no longer working for someone, but it was actually something I'm fully passionate about. So I think that shift to go from that point to me saying, like, you know what? I only want to work 15 to 16 hours a week on business because I want to be there. I want to be there as a mom. I want to be there, for my child. I don't want my child to be brought up by nannies and other people. I want my child to feel like, I'm there in her life and she's got
mm,
that full attention from me.
mm,
But at the same time, I've always known that I'm not someone who could be a full-time stay-at-home mum. I do that once a week on Tuesdays. And I
mm.
quickly
It's the
realized
hardest
that
day of the week, isn't it?
I can't do it. I think I'm most tired. I'm most tired on Tuesdays.
There's nothing. So I do the same on Mondays, but there's nothing that my clients can throw at me that's harder than my day with Rumor on Mondays and having a mark. So she's a bit older. She's 3, but she's a terror.
Oh man.
But that's forced me to grow. It is one of my core stories, I think. And I think what the story that you just told, that transformation, that change in mindset from doing the 80-hour weeks to the 15-hour week, and
Yep,
what that means internally, I think that's possibly your core story.
absolutely. And I think it's very much become a part of both of our stories as well, because in that moment we talked about it, we realized, you know what, we don't like, I mean, we both have big things that we want to build out. I know Christina has also like massive things in like what she wants to build out in the next, 10, 15, 20 years. But we know that we don't want to spend all of our time working. Like
Mm,
it doesn't make any sense. It's what we've been used to all of our lives. Like you work 40 hours a week, you get X
mm,
amount of, money coming into the bank account, and then you take 6 weeks of holidays a year. This is just
mm,
what's normal.
mm,
And to completely sort of twist that upside down to say that, you know what, now we've got our own business, we can make our own rules. We can actually find more scalable ways to make the same level of money that's still going to give us that lifestyle, but still actually create time for us to spend on other things that we feel are more important, whether that be our family, whether that be pursuing our other passion projects. And yeah, I mean, I think it's created a complete shift for both of us just in thinking about our business this way. And I know, you know, she's on the verge herself now of having her first baby. Very much on the same page that, you know, this is what we're pursuing for our day-to-day in the business.
This is really exciting. This to me is like the new renaissance. This is why I'm really passionate about helping people to tell their stories, because I think if you can understand your story, understand yourself, tell your story, organize your life in the way that makes sense to you, not in the way that society dictates. I think that's how we progress. I think we can, you know, develop a society of empowered people and empowered at an individual level. I think that's how we move forwards.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Back when we were brainstorming around the naming and sort of messaging and like what exactly this business was that we were creating and the core program that we run, I think the one phrase that continues to come back, and it's what we like every time I think about, okay, what is our business actually about? I mean, in a nutshell, like as a label, you'll see on my LinkedIn, I've got Offer Coach on there. We help people with their offers. But in a nutshell, like what we do day in and day out is we help people to make money doing what they love. That is literally the core mission of our entire business. It just so happens that at the moment we're helping people to do that through getting their offers right.
So the offer's more of a mechanism to achieve that transformation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But so often I think that, you know, we leave our corporate lives and we're not liking who we are. I know I was there, and that was one of the reasons that I left.
That's why people leave. That's why people get.
That's why people leave. Yeah, you're not liking the lifestyle. You're not liking the person that you're becoming, and you end up in business and pretty much recreating that same sort of circumstance and situation around you. And you're just feeling trapped now because you feel like you have to keep going because now you're in this and you need to make the money and all of that stuff. And in many ways, you're like feeling probably worse than you were back when you were in your corporate days. So yeah, it's very much all around that, you know, just helping people to go into business, you know, make that leap successfully, but also make sure that they're creating a business where they love their life and they love who they are in that business as well.
I think there's an element as well of like, so one of the books that I recommend people read is Unreasonable Success by Richard Koch. And he describes that, yes, you should have big ambitions. Yes, you know, you should have mentors, but you also have to wait until like the time is right. You know, strike at the right time. You know, it's one thing having big plans, but sometimes life is going to smack you in the face. And I very much felt that over the last few years. And then it just feels like you get this kind of message where it's like, okay, it's time to press on. And that's kind of how I've been feeling this year anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes you try to force it through when it's like, well, perhaps it isn't the right time. Yeah,
I think sequencing is definitely a big thing. I mean, quite often, like business owners and entrepreneurs, like it's super, super passionate. And that's why the corporate life was never.
That's why we like run into things as well, isn't it?
It is. And I don't know if you had this when you were going through your transition. And I mean, I know we talked about that in previous conversations that we've had, but it's just, I think for a lot of people that go into business from corporate, it's this feeling of itchy feet that's always there. A lot of people, they don't act on that itchy feet or that feeling of just feeling, you know, restless because they're scared. They're scared of making the jump. They're scared of losing that stability and all of that stuff. But I feel like that's almost an indication that, you know, you're born for something more. You know, who you are is actually made to become something more. It's all about fulfilling that potential. But then once you go into business and all of that's kind of like released and you can just unleash and do all of these things and go after this unreasonable success that you were talking about, quite often we can't see the right sequencing of the steps. You just see this big thing that you want to be or you want to create, you know, this big impact, but not that, you know, there's certain steps that you need to be able to get there. You know, it's kind of like, I guess if I think about, you know, how I could visualize that, it's like, okay, you see a mountain in the distance, you know, mountain distance, this is my destination where I want to go. But what you don't know is that there's like lots of winding paths, and the way that you need to go is not going to be like a straight route. Like you can't just like tunnel your way through like all of the different obstacles that are over the next.
And there's going to be more obstacles that you can't even see yet.
You can't see them. You can't see them exactly, but you need to be able to pave a path to be able to get there. And yeah, I think a big part of it is that, you know, you have that vision in mind, but then once you have that vision, what are the steps? What's step one? What is the first thing you need to build to be able to move towards that mountain?
I think a realignment that I've been trying to make is I've probably been weak on the vision and too busy cracking on with the steps.
So you're not even.
It's always been the reverse problem
towards the
where like
mountain.
I've had a shortage of vision that I'm trying to think a bit bigger.
Yeah.